but the chat is not going to be recorded or stored anywhere. Well, it'll be stored on my computer, but I'm not going to share it anywhere. And yeah, we're going to give it until 32, 33. Hi, Emily. Good to see you. I would love to see where folks are from. We always get um, lots of Oregon people, but I'm always curious if folks find us from elsewhere in the States or beyond. Hey, Beth. Thanks for coming back. Beth presented at one of our other webinars months ago. Cool. Okay. I haven't seen anyone else pop in the last 15 seconds. So I'm going to get started and I will let folks continue to filter in. And please do continue to say hi in the chat if you feel so called. Um, Welcome to our collaborative. I'm calling this one collaborative collective marketing because that is the group that is coming to us today. So that's the kind of collaboration they are going to be speaking to us about. My name is Madeline, and for those of you who maybe don't know me, I am the collaborative farming programs manager for Oregon Farm Corps. I'm also a farmer. I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and I run our collaborative farming program, which exists to support any sort of collective project between farmers here in Oregon. Here's our brief agenda for this hour webinar. I am going to be giving a very quick intro into us and what we do. And then I'm going to pass it over to our amazing guest speakers. We have three farmers from the collective here tonight, and I am really grateful to have them here. I've been sort of distant fans of of their separate work as farms, and I'm also excited to learn more about what their collective looks like. Um, Before we launch into any of these webinars, I do like to take, or any of our learnings about cooperatives and collectives, I like to take a moment to just acknowledge that these principles of interdependence and collaboration and cooperation are not new. And oftentimes, when we frame it in Western farming, we talk about it as like a fun new way to approach farming with each other. But these principles have been central to cultures outside of the West for centuries. These cultural practices, these values are ones that have been intentionally stripped from us. And a lot of the ways that they are applied very specifically in farming in America, in the United States of America, have deep roots in BIPOC and especially Black communities. And I just always feel that it's important to acknowledge that before we talk about it in any way. Um, and then the only other thing that I want to share tonight is a little bit about just kind of framework for why we're here and why Oregon Farm Corps holds webinars like these. Our collaborative farming program launched almost 3 years ago now, and it has evolved a lot over those last 3 years. Um, but these webinars are one of the things we've done for perhaps the longest, which is information sharing and case study sharing. And we've heard a lot from farmers that they would like to hear and learn from each other. I think we learn the best from each other from peer learning. And so we try to bring in folks who have experimented with and practiced different forms of collaboration on their farm and provide space for them to share what they've learned with y'all. So that's why we're here tonight. We also do in-person networking and community building events. I just came back from one in Bend yep, that was last week. We're hitting pause on them for the growing season, but they will be back this fall, so keep a lookout for those. We also have an abundance of educational resources on our website. I'll be dropping links to all of this in the chat. And then our newest branch of programming is our consulting program, where folks can apply to work one-on-one with us and receive one-on-one technical assistance, as well as pass through opportunities with professional services. to help launch collective entities. So if you're feeling like what you gleaned something from tonight that's exciting you in a group of farmers you know, and you are interested in learning more about how you can launch a collective of your own, we are a great resource to reach out to in cases like that, to learn more about what your options look like and the kinds of resources we can provide to help launch it off the ground. I think that is everything I wanted to say. I will be following up with resources in the chat as well as sending a survey towards the end of the webinar. If you've ever worked in nonprofits, you know that surveys are very important to us continuing to provide resources like these. So we do appreciate you engaging with that. I think it's like 3 or 4 questions. There's my email. I'm sure you all have gotten enough emails from me, but if you need it again, there it is. And that is all from me. I'm going to zip it and hand it over to the Fruits and Veggies Collective. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Madeline.
Thank
Um, Maybe we could just start by introducing ourselves. I'm Marty. I use they, them pronouns, and I run Longway Farm, and then I'm obviously also part of this collective.
Hey everybody, I'm Ari, she, her pronouns, and I run Kamayan Farm.
Hi, I'm Emma. I use she, her pronouns, and I run Rising Sign Farm. And if my dogs are being loud, I'll try to mute myself.
So I can start by just giving a little bit of background on the collective. Yeah, so we are a group of 4 farmers. We're missing one person tonight, unfortunately. And we operate 3 different farms. So Chloe, who's absent, runs Longway with me. Um, and then Ari and Emma have their farms as well. And they have been farming on the same property for, I mean, since Rising Sign started. So yeah, we've all known each other for a long time. Emma and Chloe and I all worked together at a farm in 2019. And Chloe and Ari worked together at Ari's farm. And Emma and Ari have known each other for a long time. So we had just sort of been in the same farming community for a few years before we started really working together. Um, the first thing that we decided to do together was in 2023, I think. We decided to have a farmers market together. That was hosted in Seattle by the Cafe Flora Bakehouse. And we really enjoyed doing that event. Cafe Flora kind of ran with it and like made it this whole very sweet queer farmers night market event that was really awesome. And we also originally started the collective with one other farm, Sweet Hollow Farm. So we all got to do that together, and it was really fun, really rewarding to work with each other. And we did that again the following year in 2024. Sweet Hollow, they moved away from farming full time, so they weren't as involved at that point, but we still like to think of them as founding collective members. Um, and at the end of the 2024 season, we were facing a lot of the challenges that I'm sure you are all familiar with. Just feeling exhausted, feeling we're spending a lot of time isolated from each other, just feeling like we're kind of repeating a lot of efforts that we could be, like, instead of doing them separately, we could just be doing them all together. Kind of reduce some redundancy and hopefully solve some of the problems that we were all dealing with. Um, so in the winter of 2024 and into 2025, we had a lot of meetings and formalized the collective. We started a business. We, made all the documents that we needed to make and did a lot of planning. And we ended up with a CSA and at farmers markets. We did like big plant sale in May last year, which we're doing again this year, um, at a bunch of different markets, and then just attending one market consistently throughout the summer. We did a lot of wholesale, especially to food banks and hunger relief organizations that we partnered with. Um, and then we also did some like dried flowers. We did a lot of garlic braids, which we mostly sold at markets and stuff, but there are like a few different events here and there that we sold those through. Um, yeah, so that's kind of the basics. We started working together, like doing pretty much all of that, all of those outlets together last year. Um, and then, yeah, I think Emma's going to talk next a little bit about our experience working together.
Yes. And this is Bagel. He doesn't work with us, but he wishes he was a farm dog. Um, or maybe not. But so I think working together, there are a lot of really amazing things about working in a collective. One major thing, working with your friends is really fun and joyful. And that was one of our sort of like core goals and values as a team. Um, Collectivizing labor was really awesome. I mean, as a farm owners, you all know if you've owned a farm or like been managing farms, there's just a million things you're keeping track of and trying to do all the time. So we tried to really have delineated roles so that different people were doing different things. And like Ari and Chloe were doing all the admin, so that was a huge shift from running a farm individually, where we're doing like 3 times the admin. Now we're doing one set of admin, and then Marty did all the propagation, and so that was, and we would all like help out and pitch in as needed, but having these sort of delineated roles helped us. The goal was to get more streamlined, and it was kind of wild. Like last season, I barely seeded a single thing, which I was like, I formerly had spent so much time in the spring seeding. So being able to sort of specialize and get to do things that we were each really excited about and also good at, I think was really, really an awesome part of of forming the collective. Um, we also were really lucky to have an experienced farm crew. We hired 3 crew members in 2025, and all 3 of them had worked for us before. 2 of them had worked at Rising Sign, and one of them had worked at Kamayan. And so that was just amazing to like have them join the crew, know what they were doing, and also be really valuable members of the team and be able to like do things on their own and also give us feedback and help us as we navigated doing something completely new together, because there's growing pains, in figuring out something for the first time in a season. One of the other awesome things was joining all 3 farms together. We just had a much bigger reach as far as marketing and yeah, getting our things out there. So we increased our size like acreage wise, but also just production wise, which was pretty exciting. And we were able to do that because we were able to bring together all 3 of our sort of farm clientels and community. And I think we had an 125 member CSA, and we were able to sell it out in 2 weeks, which was really cool and really exciting. And then we were able to have these amazing partnerships with food banks, which were mostly built on the relationships that Ari had built over the years with different organizations who are doing hunger relief. And yeah, and then there's other things that we've done as a collective, like we've done fundraising efforts together, and we did a fundraising effort for Palestine in 2020. That was 2024 that we did that. And maybe one of you remembers how much money we made, but it was like just really exciting that we could together raise a lot more money than we could individually, and support something that we all cared about through using the collective power of our businesses and our communities. And we also were able to bring in a lot of other farms in Washington, who wanted to donate to that cause, which um, yeah, I think there's just so much power in being able to do those things together. Um, One of our big goals as a collective was to also just improve our personal well-being. I think I feel like this is maybe after year one mixed reviews. There were some things about it that were like I said, we had so much fun. I don't think I ever laughed so much in a farm season, just being able to like be with your friends every day, work, doing really hard work, but being able to share that with other people was really amazing. I think we also worked a lot more, which was, I was not expecting that. I thought we would maybe work a little bit less as a group, but somehow we worked more. Um, yeah, and then I just also think one of the major successes was the volume of food we were able to produce. Being at a larger scale and being in a group was, yeah, really, really fantastic to be able to provide that quantity and quality of food to the community. Um, Marty and Ari, do you have anything to add about our what worked?
Well, just under the farmer well-being thing, we did have a very successful lunch system last year, which I was very proud of. We had like a rotating, someone cooked lunch for the whole crew every week, and it was just really nice. And it made it so that we all like had a nourishing meal every day, and um, definitely don't want to undervalue how awesome that part of it was.
Yeah, farm lunch was a huge success, I would say. Um, yeah, it was amazing. And it was really nice for our crew too, because they never cooked. So one of the four of us would make lunch every week, and then everybody got to eat, which was yeah, a huge benefit. And we got to eat the food we're growing, because sometimes in the middle of the day you're like, I'm eating a bag of chips now, and that's not ideal. Um, yeah, I think I would also say one of the other successes, then I'll pass it off to Ari, who's going to talk about some of our lessons learned and what was challenging. But we did a lot of work, like I just so much work in the winter. We met every week for a full day from like maybe October to when the season really got ramped up in March. We were having like full day long meetings and sometimes more than that to really dial in all our systems and like talk about our values and our goals and how we wanted to communicate, how we were going to deal with conflict, how we were going to delineate all the tasks, how we were going to make decisions. Like we really just spent so much time doing that. And I think that was really just an important way to go into something like this. Sorry.
Thanks, Emma. So hi again, everybody. My name's Ari. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our lessons learned and just overall challenges from our first year of being a formalized collective together. Um, so Emma just alluded to this a little bit, but I think one of our primary goals was to have more work-life balance. And one of the challenges of that we maybe didn't foresee as much as we should have was that we were essentially forming a brand new business and figuring out all of the ways that we were going to work together. And I think the result of that was that we ended up working a lot. And because we are a collective that was running essentially multiple farm operations, we were split between two different sites. So Emma and I have been on the same property for maybe about, or we've worked side by side on the same property for maybe about 7 years. And Marty and Chloe's farm is about 15 minutes away. And so one of our biggest challenges was like managing two different sites and having eyes on everything, making sure that things that were getting overwhelmed with weeds got weeded on time, stuff like that. I think it was just like particularly challenging, even though there were so many of us, to manage two different sites because I'm sure if you all are farming, you know it's sort of like it's a very visual format. You have to be able to see everything, be really consistent, and I think we weren't as consistent as we wanted to be with our management of both properties. Um, Sort of to dovetail off of that, one of our biggest challenges throughout all of our farming careers, but especially in the past year or so, has just been land insecurity. Um, and we're all renters, we're all tenant farmers, which means that we don't get any equity out of the work that we put in other than like being able to produce this beautiful food for our communities. Um, and I think, probably most farmers dream of having like a farm that they own someday, but the four of us have been uh, farming for like most of our adult careers, which means that we've been earning farmer wages for most of our adult careers. And we farm just outside of Seattle, which is a very expensive place to be farming in. We're like right next to the headquarters of Microsoft and all these tech companies. And the land that we farm on and the area that we farm in is just very expensive, and it's really hard to meet our basic needs, let alone be able to save for a possible land purchase in the future. So I think that is something that has kind of dogged all of us for our entire farming careers is just like the instability of being tenant farmers. Um, Let me take a look at my notes. Yeah, somebody else put a little note in here about where we're at in our careers. Does anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I put that there. I think I just wanted to also say that I feel like some of these challenges are things that like if we had started this collective like 5 years ago, I would have been like, okay, this is a challenge I can hang in there a little longer for, but just kind of similar to what Ari was saying, like the financial limitations and the like unclear paths forward in terms of land access. I think they just sort of like hit a little bit differently at this stage in my career personally with farming than they maybe would have if we had like started working together a few years ago. And also, yeah, similar to what you were saying, just that like there are some particular um challenges working in the area that we work in, particularly related to cost and like income disparity between farmers and the average resident in the area.
Yeah, thank you. I think the last thing that I'll share, which was our biggest challenge and sort of leads into what Emma will be talking about next, is that we had a lot of financial precarity last season. Our big goal was to be able to pay all of us to be working full time on the farm year round. And we fell a little bit short of that goal. And I think there are a lot of different reasons for it. I think one of them is that it just is a huge amount of payroll to pay four people full time year round on farmer income. We also had three part-time crew members through most of the spring, summer, and fall, and so that was something we were so excited to have, but was also like a continual source of stress throughout the season to just ensure that we could make payroll and make sure that everyone was taken care of and that we could fulfill our promises to our crew. Um, but yeah, I think in general, just the prices that you're able to get for food, even though we were producing at an incredibly large volume, just is not necessarily enough to sustain that many people full time year round, especially living in an area that's as expensive as where we live. Um, and I think, anytime you have financial precarity, there's also a lot of stress. So I think all four of us were living with a lot of stress, and we are good friends and we love each other and we care about each other, and that's a hard situation to be in with anybody, but especially with people where, you know, um, we're all really invested in each other's well-being, and it was really hard to know at a certain point that we weren't going to be able to financially take care of each other in that way. Um, so yeah, I think that leads into a portion that Emma's going to share with you all about where we're at now.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but maybe it'll come back to me. But now we're going into our second season. And in part due, or I would think, say, in large part due to the financial challenges of our first season, and then sort of combined, I think, with where we're all at in our careers and lives, in our own needs. The majority of the core ownership of the collective is working off farm this season, full time. So that is obviously a huge a huge change. I'm continuing to work on farm full time, and then we have two of our crew members, one of whom is here tonight, and who are also continuing to stay on the farm. Hi, Corey. This season, um, yeah. So I think it was a really hard decision to for I think for all of us to make. Like, where do we go in the winter when we're facing looking at the bank account and being like, okay, we're not going to actually be able to pay ourselves through the winter, and being, as Ara is mentioning, the care we have for each other and wanting to be able to support each other and ourselves in that way made it really hard, to face that reality. And I think felt for me really different than being on my own, where if I had had a tough financial season previously, I was like, okay, well, this winter I know I can get XYZ job. I can like do some random gigs. But then when you're interconnected financially, that was yeah, just a trickier situation to be in. So this season we've scaled back our operations. We're going back to sort of like the scale that Rising Sign was at in 2024. Yeah, 2024. And we're continuing to operate as the collective because everybody is still involved in some way, even though not on the farm full time. And the way that's kind of looked so far is like, um, people are jumping in as they can. Marty lives on the property actually where Ari and I lease land to farm, and I live far away from that property, so Marty does all the watering and stuff when I'm not there on the weekends, or like today when I had a bunch of meetings. And then Ari's still been doing a lot of like all the wholesale actually communication and invoicing and all that, and making really beautiful signs for our plant start sales in May. And Marty's been printing all our plant start labels, and then Chloe will we have like a shared note, and Chloe will just like order things that I put in the note that we need. And one of the other really valuable things I think about being in the collective, which we didn't talk about earlier with the successes, is just like having more people who you trust and who are experienced to bounce ideas off of, and to say, do you think I should do this, or this thing is happening, what should we do now? So that has been just a huge benefit, to me personally, even though there's definitely a big part of me that wishes we were all still working together every day. It's just so helpful to still be a part of feel like we're a part of a team, and that we're really supporting each other and taking care of each other in different ways. Yeah, so that's where we're at now. And I think it's different probably from how we imagined, but I'll be curious to see where the season takes us.
Cool. Is now a good time to maybe start with some Q&A?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know I immediately have like a dozen follow-ups, but I will see to the chat first. If anyone would like to pop in with a question, you can come off mute, raise your hand, or pop it in the chat. If there's not immediately a question, then I'm going to ask mine. I'm curious how you decided, like, on forming, when you decided in your journey as a collective that it was time to form a separate business entity and how you went about th that process, what that looked like for you.
Yeah,
Do you want me to jump in?
go
Sure.
for it.
Well, part of the history that we didn't really talk about is that because Emma and I have been farming side by side for so many years, we sort of naturally over the years share like decided to collectivize a lot of our processes. So like if we had deliveries and we were going to similar places or the same place, like Emma or I would take turns doing that. And so uh, the fall before we decided to like form our business, I think she and I were both realizing that there could probably be some benefit to just formalizing that relationship and those roles. And we spoke to Marty and Chloe about it, and I think we're all kind of in a similar place of like just wanting more support and more connection. And I think the part of what compelled us to form a separate business structure was just knowing that we were going to be running a CSA together, we were going to be doing markets together. There was just going to be a lot of money coming through. And it was way too complicated to, and probably not legal in some ways to like run it through one business entity. Um, and so we decided, yeah, to have a separate, an entirely separate entity called Fruits and Veggies Farm Collective, which is what our collective had been called previously, but this was like, for the banks and everything. Um, and then I think the other processes like leading up to that were really important to all of us was to make sure that we had like I can't think of the proper word for it right now, but like really strong, tight group agreements, and ownership structure, all of that really, we wanted to make sure we had all of that really laid out. Um, yeah. And also happy to answer a lot more questions about, or any more questions about what that document looks like.
There is one in the chat from Jude, curious what legal business structure you're under. Is it an LLC or something else?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an,
Oh yeah.
oh, sorry.
Oh, you go.
It's a multi-member LLC. We also filed as an S corp, which I don't know if, yeah, I'm not the person to ask about whether or not that's a smart thing to do as a group. But one really nice thing about filing as an S corp is that as owners, we were all on payroll. So it was helpful when we were doing our individual taxes because we got W-2s just like any regular employee. Um, as far as like filing federal taxes, I think it's more complicated. But again, talk to a CPA.
Yeah, we also just like opted not to be a co-op because that's like a very specific business structure that has like some intense requirements in Washington. I know it's different in every state, but it just like didn't feel like a very accessible option for us. So
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's similar in Oregon. And that is something that we help with. For those of you on here who are interested, we help with all of those processes and we've already worked with a multi-member LLC farm so far this year. I'm curious to whatever extent you're comfortable sharing about how you outlined things like that compensation piece. Is it equally divided amongst the members? Is it based on labor hours contributed to the collective? Like, how was that decided on and managed?
Yeah, so we basically set a goal for ourselves at the beginning of the season based on our budgeting, our projected budgets of how much we each wanted to make in the year. And we just divided it equally because we were all working full time. This year it's different because we're not all working full time. Um, but yeah, so we divided it equally and we just were on an hourly rate, the same hourly rate as all of our crew. And when when you're in payroll, you put in the hours worked. I will say in this, I guess I'll say this, which is that we we did not pay ourselves for full-time work. We paid ourselves for part-time work.
Yeah, and also we did try to track hours for a while, but we just didn't do a very good job of keeping track of hours. So I think there was like kind of an agreement based on what we had talked about in the winter that we would all be working full time, and we were all kind of communicating about how much we were working to try to keep it even. But yeah, we did just have that unfortunately less than full time um paycheck that was like the same number of hours for each of us every pay period.
That makes a lot of sense. Along that kind of thinking about paying yourselves, how did you, so sorry, Molly asked, how did you split up paying for expenses? And I'm gonna expound on that if I can, Molly, because I'm curious specifically to like not only expenses for perhaps things that are directly shared by the collective, but also how to manage assets that maybe are owned by the individual farms but used by the collective.
Yeah, so in terms of our expenses, because we were a multi-member LLC and have a bank account and everything for the business. All of our income and expenses came from that account. So if we had to purchase something for the collective, it just came out of that bank account. So we didn't have to do a ton of tracking necessarily about who was buying what. We just, we all have our cards, and anytime something needed to be purchased, we use that account. And then part of the formation document that we created had a section that listed out all of the assets that we were each bringing into the collective, so that we could track that. And then we just had a lot of conversations about what each of us was comfortable like using inside of the collective, like if there was stuff we didn't want to have be a collective asset, essentially. Um, and I think, the understanding was that if we were to stop working as a collective, that we can all sort of like recoup our assets if they still are functional.
Yeah. I also would add that at the beginning when we first opened our bank account, we all contributed. I forget what the amount was, but we all contributed an equal amount. I think some folks ended up contributing a little bit more, just to like cover initial expenses before we had any income. Um, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say.
Anyone else? I want to give a space if anyone's. Oh, there we go. Mackenzie, were there any farms you looked to for inspiration or guidance on how to form this collaborative model?
And that's a
Oh,
good question.
I'm sorry, I remembered what I was gonna say. Just that there were like some shared materials, and I think that you could structure like shared materials really differently than how we did, but I think especially just headed into like the first season, like Ari and Emma had vans. Like we weren't interested in trying to like purchase the vans as a collective, you know. They just kind of like remained assets for each of their businesses that then we like um kind of figured out how to compensate them for. But I think that could be done a lot more formally. I think that's just how we chose to do it because we had like an existing baseline of trust. But yeah, as far as guidance or inspiration, I don't know if anyone else has other things to say.
I think we talked a lot about like reaching out to other we're trying to find other farms who are doing something similar. Um There, my brain is not, I don't have the best memory at the present moment. So if either of you can remember the names of the farms, but there's another friend of ours, Long Hearing Farm. They are a cooperative farm. So I feel like for me, they watching them grow and figure things out has been an inspiration for me over the years. It's also pretty structured quite differently from how we wanted to structure our farm, I think. And then yeah, I think there's a lot of there's that collaborative farming podcast, which I think we've all listened to different parts of at different times. Um, and I feel like there's some cool ideas on there about like cooperative marketing or cooperative land use, collective CSAs, those kinds of things. But I personally don't think we found anyone who was doing something exactly the way we did it, at least that we know. I'm sure someone out there is doing it. We just didn't know about them, where it's like sort of merging three separate entities um, in a very like integrated way.
Yeah, I've done a lot of reading about this and I haven't come across another group that's quite the same as what you've been doing. I have two more questions in the chat, so I'm gonna move through them. Jude says, is there a way to build equity investment of those over hours, accounting for contributions, asset building issue, and then they said we might like to meet your CPA with experience in such complexities. So I think and feel free to expand on that, but I think the question is building equity maybe via hours instead of cash contribution up front.
I'm not sure if I understand the question, but feel free to expand, or if you two are understanding, let me know.
I'm also wondering if they're talking about like if we work more hours, but we aren't being compensated directly for them, if there's like a way
Oh,
to.
that might be what. Jude, why don't you, if you want to expand on it in the chat or come off mute, but I'll read Emily's question next, while we wait for that. Given what you've learned, are there other things you would have done prior to setting up the collective to maybe help it work better financially or better meet your financial goals? Are there benchmarks you wish you would have tried to meet first, or maybe a business or financial growth plan that would lead to the collective formation once certain goals were met?
Mm.
I, yeah, I guess I'll just speak to what I'm thinking about immediately off the bat, but I feel like my inclination is that it would have probably been easier to reach financial goals together, just like after more years and like doing, we talked a lot about like pursuing value added um things that aren't just selling vegetables. And I think that like probably was the way that we would have gone if we had been able to stay in the game in the same way. But um I don't know. I think that I felt more confident in my ability to like reach the goals that I wanted to reach in collective rather than alone. Because also something that I didn't speak to is that Chloe and I were both working part-time to full-time off-farm jobs um the whole time we were running our farm. So it was just like this challenging like yeah, I don't know. Basically the collective gave me the opportunity to work full-time on a farm for the first time, and that I felt like was the only way to really like build a business in a meaningful way that could like support me and other folks full time. Uh and I don't know. I think it's I don't know. I guess I'm just like it could work a lot better like for other folks who are in a different place in their life and career. Like I don't think that the collective necessarily led us to not making enough money. Like I don't think that was the problem. I think it was just that like after many years of chronically not being able to make enough money on the farm, it was sort of like and also, there's like personal life factors as well, that are leading to that decision. So yeah.
Yeah, I think one part of forming the collective that we didn't really talk about is that we've all been farming, like I've been farming for over a decade. I think we've all been farming for over a decade or close to a decade by the time we started this collective. And we'd all been facing these, systemic challenges individually. And I really do believe that there's a way to make this work in a collectivized manner that can address some of those challenges. But in some ways, forming the collective was like a last ditch effort to be like, can we keep going? Um, and yeah, so I just think that was like our personal journey, but I do think that um, there would be a way forward to meet some of those goals, although I am just not sure, like given the system that we live in and the way that farmers are not supported, that it's really possible to make a living wage in any sort of farm setting in the Northwest, at least.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that's sort of what I was trying to get at with the at the beginning when I was saying that like there are some particularities to our situation that are making it extra challenging. And I think just being in an extremely expensive area is one of them. And if that's not your constraint, things might be different, but it is ours, unfortunately.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think just to add to all of that, I think we have all over the years done a lot of research and talking to people, and I think you all probably know this, but what the data says is basically there's like a ceiling that most farmers can make on average that's like around $30,000 a year. And in my opinion, and just like anecdotally from talking to a lot of other people and having worked in farm support roles for many years, I, my opinion is that the only way to breach that 30K ceiling is to either have some sort of successful value added product, own your farmland and be able to write off a lot of your activities, or agritourism, which also generally involves needing to own your own land. And so I think, um, because we've all been farming for so long, we have all tried a lot of different things to sort of breach that ceiling. And I feel like in my own farm personally, I was able to do that, and it still really was not enough to have um, just a good quality of life, and to be able to afford the things that I need to afford, like basic healthcare and um, things like that. I do think actually as part of the collective, we were very close to meeting our financial goals. Like we really didn't come that far under it, but I think, part of the problem was that we weren't paying ourselves full time and we were paying ourselves minimum wage in the county that we're in. Um, and yeah, I think there are some small things like I think we could have tightened up our production. I think we had a lot of debate about the two property thing, like if we had been on one property collectively, I think that would have cut down on a lot of time. But ultimately, I don't know that it would have cut down enough to like boost our profits that significantly to make us suddenly financially sustainable.
I really appreciate that honesty and realness, and I think that it is a particular challenge in the Pacific Northwest. I think it's a challenge universally, but I think you're speaking to a truth that so many people on this call feel and understand deeply. Um, Jude did chime in again. Okay. Besides vans and personal assets, how much do you still maintain individual farm businesses? And then I think this is them expanding more on the first one. Um, when tracking hours, do you consider cooperative principles where each member benefits according to their contribution, profit sharing, or at least sharing what you have in wages in that way? And then also asked if you've pursued VAPG or other grants in the Seattle King County area.
That stands for Value Added Producer Grant for folks that don't know. Um, we We applied for a lot of grants and we got some of them. We were able to purchase some pretty significant infrastructure because of that. I think were we to stay at the same scale in this second year or into the future, we definitely would have pursued a value-added producer grant. We know a lot of other farmers who have gotten that, and it's been really useful. Um, in terms of the hours tracking, we had like a lot of conversation about this when we were planning. And I think ultimately what we decided is that as four people, we're equal members, and um, we expected equal contribution. And if for some reason during the season that felt like that wasn't happening, or there was some sort of asymmetry in terms of how much people were contributing, um, then that would have warranted a conversation. But I don't know that any of us felt that way. Um, so I'm not sure if this answers your question, but we shared our profits equally based on that principle.
And as far as maintaining the individual businesses, we also went back and forth a lot on this before we decided to sort of go all in together and form a whole new business. But basically, we sort of maintained our businesses in name, I would say. And then in function, we were really working together under as a whole new business.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and maybe in values, we like maintained our individual businesses, but also brought a lot of that into the collective business.
Yeah, I think that decision was kind of made like just because it was our first season trying this together and we didn't want to like dissolve personal like other businesses if we decided that we didn't want to continue working in collective together. Um,
So is Fruits and Veggies Collective owned? Are the members you individually, or are the members your farms?
They're us individually.
yeah, I
Okay, and
think it would
then
be a little more complicated if it was our businesses.
sure, I imagine I'm not a lawyer, but I imagine. And then oh, I had a follow-up to that. It's escaping me now. Let me see if I can remember it. Does anyone else have any? We have 6 more minutes. If anyone else. Oh, my other question was going to be, so your individual farms did not uh, engage in any sort of sales this last year. It was all through the collective.
I think I maybe had some individual sales because I do a lot of dried flower stuff and have just occasional clients that ask for that. And so I think there were maybe a couple times throughout the season that I did that. But
Mhm.
I think, yeah, this is something we had talked a lot about too. And at the end of the day, it was just ultimately easier to run most of our sales through the collective.
Yeah, I think we also had kind of envisioned a bit more separation at the very beginning of the year, but by the time we were like in the season working together, it just became clear that like we were very enmeshed and that we it just didn't make sense to run sales through other platforms because we were all working on the same things. Like it would feel weird if we had all, seeded, planted, weeded something together and then we were like, oh, we're gonna sell this as long way.
Also, I think a big part of that is that, we were trying to really decrease our administrative load. And so it just felt kind of silly at a certain point to keep things separate and then be doing like two separate books and all the invoicing separately. So in some ways, it was just like much easier to run it all through the collective.
Yeah, I think that speaks a lot to that wintertime work you did to build that trust and operational guidelines so that you could be all in like that. Molly asked, and we have 4 minutes, so if you have any more last minute questions, throw them in. Molly asked if you were going to do a value added product, what would it be?
We talked about this a lot. um, Yeah, because just in the fields we'd be like, what about this? What about this? What about this? But I think both or Chloe and Marty and Ari all have a lot of experience doing growing flowers. And I feel like the direction or one thing that would have been exciting to all of us is to do more value added flower stuff. Like we did a couple of workshops in the fall that Ari led teaching wreath making, everlasting wreath making. And those were really well attended and people are excited about it. But then that's also something that like I feel like that's where it gets a little tricky because the wreaths are something that Ari has uh yeah, has clients for and has built up over the years. So originally it was going to be sort of separate. I don't know, do the two of you have other thoughts on what value added products we would do?
I mean, we were doing garlic braids,
Yeah.
which are pretty big value add. But I'm not sure that that's what I would want to focus a value added producer grant effort on because they're still quite labor intensive.
Our one of our awesome crew members is also on the call, Corey, if Corey wants to chime in. Corey was definitely a part of lots of those like lunchtime conversations about like what if we did this? So
I don't know what you're alluding to.
Okay.
What was it beans?
oh, yeah, we all have a deep affinity and love for dry beans. And so we did actually get a big grant to get a bean thresher. And we have that now. And so if at any point in the future we decide to do lots and lots of dry beans, that's definitely like a dream of ours.
I do remember having a lot of cool ideas, but they are definitely slipping my mind right now. I think that those ideas only exist in the field, and I need to go back to the field to gather them.
Well, let us know.
I will.
Thank you. Go harvest them.
Thank you. Thank you.
That that the bean comment triggered me. I tried dried beans for this last year, and it was like the I can't imagine people making money on beans. You have to charge so much, but it was so much fun. And then they all got weevils over the winter, so it was a complete waste of time, but it
No.
was a lot of fun. It's my own personal bean story. Um, but you're getting lots of love in the comments. Yeah, thank you so much for approaching this topic with the candor and the honesty that you did. I think that's always really appreciated by farmer audiences. We are just a minute away from time, and I do want to honor and respect the hour that we set aside for this. I am dropping in the chat right now before you leave, please, please, please. I have a survey. If you are on the call still and just do it now, it's like 3 or 4 questions, and I really appreciate it, as well as some resources from us. And then I also wanted to drop, and I lost the link, the collective. If any of you have it, the collective or the link to your collective. Here it is. Um, thank you, Jeffrey, for taking the survey. He also works for OFC. He's like, hyping it up in the chat. Thanks. There's the link to the Fruits and Veggies Farm Collective. I will be sending a follow-up email with the recording, and then potentially adding whoever is comfortable sharing their emails. If you have follow-up questions, if you want to send emails, I will share that as well. And that's it. Thank you so much to the three of you for coming out and just, sharing your experience and being so open with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, y'all. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye. All right. And end meeting.